Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Smart Money Circle update. I'm Adam Sarhan. With me today is Adrian Gottschalk, who's the president and CEO of Foghorn Therapeutics. Ticker symbol is FHTX. Adrian, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Smart Money Circle.
Thank you, Adam, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise. So, Adrian, I always like to begin. Can you tell us a little about your journey and how you got to where you are today, please?
Sure, I'll start a little bit with what is ancient history. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, son of an orthopedic surgeon. We actually immigrated to the United States from Johannesburg, South Africa. So grew up in Texas, thought I'd be a physician or a surgeon, and got a biochemistry degree from Texas A&M University down in College Station, Texas, and figured out I didn't actually want to be a physician, but I really loved the sciences and biotech, and ended up coming up to Massachusetts. This was in the early 2000s to go to graduate school here. I went to the MIT Sloan School for Business School, and contemporaneous with that was a really cool program. It was called the Biomedical Enterprise Program. That was this joint degree program between the Harvard MIT Health Sciences Technology Center. And that was a catapulting program, if you will, for me to really jump into biotech. And I joined a company which I think is pretty well known, Biogen. Major biotech, has been involved in a lot of different important therapeutic areas, and sort of grew up there over the course of 14 or so years, and always had this aspiration to be a leader in the life sciences sector. That was sort of the common thread, if you will, from growing up in Texas and undergrad all the way to grad school, and had the opportunity, now about 7 years ago, to join a startup company, Foghorn Therapeutics. We were much smaller and much earlier 7 years ago than we are today. And, it's been one of my goals in my life to be able to make a meaningful impact on my fellow human beings. And the best way I can do that is through leading a biotech company. So that's a short, abridged version of how I got to where I am today.
Wow, I absolutely love it. So, perfect segue to my next question. Can you please tell us a little about Foghorn and some of your competitive advantages?
Sure. So a little bit about the company. We are a biotechnology company. We are focused on the development of medicines for cancer. There are potentially other disease areas that we will get into over time, but at this point, we are really obsessed with how do we help people who are suffering, unfortunately, from cancer. We're focused on a pretty unique area of biology. I'll keep it sort of at a high level for folks who aren't deep in the science. We're basically working on a biological system that is responsible for orchestrating when and where and how our genes are turned on and off in our cells. And so, as I'm sure people can appreciate, in healthy cells, your cells are running the right gene expression programs, right? Your heart cells stay heart cells, your neurons in your brain stay neurons, or muscle cells are muscle cells. Unfortunately, in the case of cancer, as we know, it's really a disease of the cell's gene expression profiles gone awry, and those cells start running the wrong gene expression programs, if you will. And the biology that we are focused on is really responsible, as I said, for determining when, where, and how these genes are turned on and off. I like to use the simplifying analogy of if the genes are the blueprints for telling our cells what to do, then the biology that we work on is really the architect determining how those blueprints are used. And you can imagine, if the architect starts putting the toilet in the middle of the kitchen, that's not a good situation. So,
right.
And that's a very graphic one, of course, but it really tells you that if you could figure out how to drug this important system, and it's called the chromatin regulatory system. Don't need to know those words per se, but if you could figure out how to change what this architect is doing, you could have a pretty profound impact on cancer. So we've built, the team and I here at Foghorn have built the company up over the course of about 7+ years. We started off as a classic biotech startup, a little bit of money some really profound ideas on how to make medicines. And we've grown into obviously a publicly traded company. We are well capitalized. Yep, thank you. And well capitalized as of our September financials, $259 million on our balance sheet. We have a major collaboration with the Eli Lilly folks, specifically their Loxo Oncology division. That was a major partnership we structured a few years back. We have a clinical program that is going after acute myelogenous leukemia. That is a very deadly and unfortunate blood cancer that many people unfortunately still succumb to. And then we have a pipeline of a wide range of different programs that tackle different types of cancers based on the underlying biology. And what we've built, from a competitive advantage perspective, and I always like to think about competitive advantage, sort of in the simple acronym of is it VRIO? Is it valuable? Is it rare? Is it hard to imitate? And then have you organized in a way that allows you to take advantage of those three factors? And so what we've built is a unique way to study this biology in a very systematic, integrated manner. That's led us then to the second part, is unique insights in how to actually develop tests, or we would call assays, and various high throughput screening mechanisms to actually find the medicines that interact and act upon this biology. And then we've actually built very significant capabilities on chemistry, which allows us then to drug this system in a very selective way, right? The challenge always when one is making medicines is you want it to do what it's supposed to do, and you want to limit the sort of side effects or issues that can come. We all, at some point in our life, take some sort of medicine as we go through life. And so that's what we're trying to harmonize and do. We've built this, what we call our gene traffic control platform, that allows us to drug this biology. And, the question I always am asked and try and respond to is like, well, why does this matter, and why should people care? And the reality is this biology, from our perspective, is impacted potentially in upwards of 50% of cancers. There's some sort of relationship back to this biology. And so, even if we only touch on a fraction of that, this is still a massive opportunity. And it's a huge impact to make a difference for people with cancer. Unfortunately, we all know someone who's had cancer. I unfortunately lost my father to a very rare cancer. So this isn't just a business mission for me and my team. For me, it's actually deeply personal as we're getting after this unique biology.
I love that. Thank you for explaining. And I love what you said about the competitive advantages of the VIRO, where it's just, I always take notes when people speak: value, rare, hard to imitate, and organized. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the technically value, is it valuable? Is it rare? Is it inimitable, which is a fancy way of saying hard to imitate? Mm-hmm. And then are you organized in a way that takes advantage of those three factors? And one thing I should actually say I left out is what I'm really proud of what we've done here at Foghorn is build a pretty exceptional culture that's focused on innovation. It's a place where great ideas can come from anyone in the company. And I give a lot of credit to my chief scientific officer, who's built a research organization that allows us to organize in a way that we can be innovative. And we've got, I think, the pipeline, the platform, the partnership to sort of prove that.
I love that. So let's talk about risk. How do you handle risk, and what are some mistakes you see people make with respect to risk management?
Yeah, I'd say just first off, I tend to think that we as human beings are pretty bad at actually assessing risk. We tend to either over exaggerate what is going to happen, and if the world is, the sky is falling, the world is in a catastrophic position, or we sort of are, strolling through the tulip fields without a care in the world. And so I think actually one of the biggest challenges is calibrating risk and understanding, in the case of what we do as an example, what is the risk we're taking as we go after new biology? What is the risk in the medicine that we're developing? And as you engineer, if you will, the drugs, you're optimizing for something, but then you may be changing another parameter. So calibrating that and quantifying it, I think, is actually pretty challenging. Mm-hmm. And the simple way I sort of have gotten to think about it is there's risks that we know and that we can do something about. There's risks that we know, but it's frankly, out of our control. That often ends up being macro or, as an example, the Fed. I sort of know, yeah. I know it's a risk, but I don't know what decisions they're necessarily going to make. Right. And then, the ones that I think are the most challenging is the unknown, the things you don't know that you don't know. Mm-hmm. So, the mistake I think that people often make is two things. One, what I mentioned, which you sort of either overinflate the risk or underappreciate it. So, the solution there is trying to be as systematic as you can be in assessing risk. And I think the second one is people often conflate uncertainty and risk. And so something can be uncertain, but not necessarily be risky. And I think, the way to assess that is obviously to work on whatever the problem is, to ascertain is, okay, what is the outcome of this? Is that risky or not? But I think, especially in the drug development world, oftentimes I imagine for what you assess and your clients who look at investing in stocks, I think trying to disaggregate those concepts and really think carefully through, is this really risky, or is it just sort of something I can dig into and really understand the situation and issue? So
absolutely.
A few thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that. So the known risks versus unknown risks, I've noticed patterns now. I've been doing this for 14 seasons and over 120 episodes or whatever it is now. And I love when I hear people that don't know each other that repeat similar themes or similar concepts. Yeah. And you're nailing on two really, really powerful ones: known risks versus unknown risks. And then the uncertainty doesn't necessarily equal risk. That's really
absolutely. I think you can look at, I sort of bring this back to small biotech. And oftentimes people say, oh, well, small biotech can be super, super risky. And well, is it risky or is it just uncertain? And you can discharge that uncertainty by working through the problems, digging into the science. And so on one hand, I looked at my transition from what was a very, very large biotech company, Biogen, to Foghorn. And I said, well, it didn't feel risky to me. It was, there's uncertainty, and I'm going to figure out how I discharge that uncertainty by working through the problems, getting into the science, hiring the right people, figuring out the path forward. Mm-hmm. There's, of course, risk associated with different things, but I think separating those two things is actually pretty important.
I love that. It's really, really powerful. Thank you. So let's talk about timeless lessons you've learned along the way that you'd like to share with the audience, please.
Yeah, there's probably several that come to mind.
Bring it on.
Yeah, whether these are appropriate for everyone, I'll let the audience be the judge. But for me as a CEO and having led different teams, both in the United States, outside I was responsible at one point for the emerging markets in Asia Pac, Japan, Australia region at Biogen. It's all about the people in the team. Certainly, you have an intellectual property, you can have patents, but to get to that point, you've got to have the right people. And certainly, if you want to do something in a sustainable manner, it comes down to the people around you. I think about this often in the concept of high-performing or championship teams. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's appropriate post the Super Bowl, right, that just took place, and what is it that creates this high-performance, sustainable success? And I think it comes down to the people in the team, as I said. So that's one timeless lesson, in my opinion, is, be very careful who you hire, be very particular about with whom you work. You obviously want the best people that you can get, but sometimes it's not about everyone being the superstar. It's about the team being the superstar, and that's a slightly shift in the mentality of maybe idolizing someone or having hero worship. Mm-hmm. But you need talented people. There's three things I thought of here. The second one was what I've learned, certainly as a CEO of a company that went from private to public, We actually went public in the middle of COVID.
Wow.
Some challenges and overcoming that as the world as we know was sort of changing around us is, when in doubt, you have to persevere. I think you've got to find that well of resilience within you as the leader to push forward and have a plan that allows you to cope with, again, the uncertainty. You're in control of so little at some level in life. And the way I think to process through that is just to continue to persevere and ensure that you know what your North Star is in terms of what you're trying to achieve. The third one, which I take exceptionally seriously as a leader, and I credit a very close friend of mine, retired Marine Corps aviator, had said this to me at one point. He said, your integrity is something that only you can give away, and it should never be for sale at any price. And I think oftentimes in companies and situations, obviously, I have a responsibility to my shareholders, a very serious one from a fiduciary perspective, and you're trying to create value. But at least as I like to think about capitalism in the United States, it should be done with an incredible degree of integrity. And again, I think you lose that, you're in a very, very bad place. So those are three lessons. Again, just it's all about the people and the team. You have to be able to persevere and be resilient, and your integrity is everything. So hopefully those are helpful tips to folks out there.
Absolutely love it. Phenomenal answer. I love the integrity can't be given away. That's just really, really next level brilliant.
I give credit to one of my good friends on that one. So
deal. It's one of those things. I don't care where the idea comes from. I tell people in the show, even from the gender, I'll take it with please and thank you and bells on. So
absolutely.
So Adrian, how about some timeless mistakes that you'd like to share with the audience, please? Either that you've made, you've learned, how do you overcome them, so on and so forth. Anywhere you want.
Yeah, I think these apply to things that I've been subject to myself over the course of my career and life. One is, I think, when you're making important and critical decisions, and by the way, this is always easier said than done. So yeah. I concede that up front. It's best to not make really critical decisions when you're emotional. Right. I've seen people when it comes to which job should they take, as a company has taken some action, and as an example, they're asking people to relocate, and people can get understandably distressed, and they say, well, I'm not going to go because I feel like I'm being treated poorly. And say, well, hold on a second, take a deep breath, take some time, process the information, really do your best to sit there and look at pros, cons, whatever method one uses to make decisions. But I think when one is emotional, you can sometimes miss the big picture. I've been faced with that in my life where there were opportunities that came my way that on first inspection, I was frustrated or upset with it, and then afterwards, took the role, and in hindsight, it was some of the best things that I did in my career. So that's one thing. I think the second one, and this tends to be sometimes an issue in a society where it's about instant gratification in some respects, is are you focusing on the short term or the long term? And I see this oftentimes with people more junior in their career. They're coming out of undergrad or grad school or some additional training. And as you're making a decision, as an example, on a career choice, obviously money is an important aspect for people. But if you're interested in your career, it's focusing on what are the jobs that are going to give you the skills. Are you going back to one of the other things we talked about, are you with the right people in a company with the right culture where you're going to grow and thrive, right? If you're fortunate, right, you're going to have a long career. And I think it's trying to optimize for the long term versus the short term. So I see that as often a mistake that people make. They're very focused on what is the immediate here and now, as opposed to maybe playing a little bit of a longer game. So those are two mistakes, unfortunately, I've made in my life at various points in time, but hopefully I've learned from them. Hopefully it's helpful to others as well.
I absolutely love that. So it's almost like there's order to consequences where short-term pain, long-term gain, or vice versa. And I use the analogy of eating cookies versus going to the gym, where people find pleasure eating the cookie short term, but you do it all day, every day. That's not good long term. And then
Yeah,
vice versa with the gym. Absolutely love that.
yeah.
So, next question for you, Adrian. Let's talk about some time, I guess, leadership. What makes a great leader? How do you inspire others? What are, just speak about leadership if you know where to go.
Yeah, it's in preparing for our conversation, I wrote some notes down, and the first thing that occurred to me is, there's no single definition, right, of what a great leader is. And there's obviously at this point probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of books and academic articles written on leadership. I'll say a few things that I think I've appreciated in people that I've looked up to, and what I aspire to as a leader. So, I think the first thing is it starts with, what is the vision and inspiration that you're bringing as a leader? I think, by definition, to lead is to take people somewhere, maybe oftentimes to places they would not purposely choose to go themselves. And so you have to be able to, and people can do it in different styles. You don't have to be the cheerleader or the uber charismatic, right? You have to be your authentic self. And I think that was a second point, is I think great leaders are authentic to who they are, is the second point. We talked a little bit about this. I think great leaders build ultimately high performing teams and organizations. I think when folks look at leaders who are destructive, they may be in a position of authority, and they may have people who have to follow them out of no choice or out of fear. I don't deem those people to be great leaders. So it's that concept of that high performing team. And I think this next one is also something that I've observed, is the great leaders, I think, are committed to a purpose much, much bigger than themselves. I've always thought about this as a student. Actually, I remember having to write stuff. It was actually on Martin Luther King, and he's someone who I've always thought was just his commitment to something that was far greater than himself. It has been inspirational, obviously, to many, many people, both here in the U.S. as well as abroad. So that bigger game, that bigger purpose, I think, is critical. And then I think the few other things, I think great leaders are generally better listeners than they are talkers. I think if you're in the room and you're sucking all the oxygen out because the only person in there who's smart is you, and you're the only one that needs to do the talking, if that's the case, you don't need a team. And obviously that's not true. I think the greatest achievements and endeavors are accomplished by groups of people working together. And so there's the concept of really being a good listener. And then again, another thing that I've seen and try and emulate is really creating an environment where people feel listened to, and their voice can be heard. I think that's exceptionally important when you're working in an innovation sector like biotech. It applies obviously in other areas, because you don't know where the great ideas are going to come from. And sometimes the person that maybe the most junior in the room actually has the answer to whatever the issue is. And then, the last thing that I think is often challenging is sort of the notion of being self-aware and willing to take feedback as a leader. I think as we all grow and get older, we sort of can get stuck in our ways, or how we're hardwired. And I think being willing to take that feedback and really digest it and take ownership of it, while at the same time actually being balanced and having the confidence to do all of that is something I aspire to, and I try and do. But those are some of the qualities I think come from great leadership, or great leaders demonstrate. So.
Wow, I love that. This is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much. I mean, that's really, really some great nuggets of wisdom there. Let's talk about adversity and obstacles you had to overcome. How do you handle adversity in general? Optimism, pessimism. I think I know where you're going to go, but I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
And by all means.
Yeah. So, in some ways I've been very blessed that, on a personal note, haven't thankfully had too much adversity, beyond, going through the usual life things, losing a parent and whatnot. I'll focus maybe more on the business and professional side. building a startup and going through the ups and downs of all of that is not for the faint of heart. Biotech in general, is a phenomenal area. Just as an aside, I really have deep conviction that we're in the era, the millennium, if you will, even not even the century of biotechnology and what we're going to be able to do to improve the well-being of humanity. The challenges I think that we've faced as a company and I face as leader, I mean, in some ways these are classical, but I think COVID added an additional sense of spiciness, if you will, to trying to build a company. And so, classically it's, how do you finance a company whilst you're trying to increase value for your shareholders? We were on the cusp of doing a financing literally when COVID hit in that early March timeframe.
Wow.
In 2020, and I remember we had lined up, roughly $100+ million, and then the world seemed to sort of fall away underneath our feet. And I've never seen money run in the opposite direction so quickly because there was so much. Again, coming back to risk and uncertainty, there was perceived this is just going to be super risky, and it seems very uncertain. Mm-hmm. Navigating that. How to then bridge that to a financing. We ended up actually being able to do a financing. We did a business development deal at the time with Merck. Then we did another private round, and then ultimately actually took the company public that same year. We actually went from what is called orging up and to go public to actually trading was about 81 or so days. So it was super rapid, all on Zoom, all of us sitting at our homes. So going through that, again, you could have just crumbled, I suppose, and said, okay, well, what's the path forward? But again, you take a step back, you figure out the plan, you persevere through it all. That's one of the notable challenges. I mean, the other stuff, which is sort of kind of routine du jour, if you will, in a biotech company, is you're constantly trying to assess science and what works. And not everything in this business works because you're trying to understand, in some ways, the mysteries of the universe or biology. Yeah. And so, we've had programs that haven't moved forward. We've had clinical challenges from time to time that you have to overcome, and you take a step back and you work through it. And you actually learn more about what you're doing, which then informs other programs, increases your chances of success on the next things you work on. So those are some of the obstacles. In terms of how do I handle adversity, it would be wrong to say that you never worry, because of course you do. I think that's a natural human reaction. But for whatever it's worth, when I encounter situations where people say, oh, well, that can never be done, or it's just hard, it sort of evokes I'm just going to work harder and really put my mind and get my team to push through the situation. Oftentimes the path is not clear, so you do have to take a step back. I mentioned having a plan is often helpful, if not critical, to managing through the challenges. And then when I think about persevering and resilience, I come back again to you've got to have the team around you. You've got to have people around you. You're supporting them and having them be resilient, and it's sort of a continuous circle where by having them be resilient, they're making you more resilient. So those are some of the ways that sort of I deal with adversity and challenge. And I think that the last one, which as I mentioned in the context of what is a great leader, I think if you have this broader mission and purpose, that sort of keeps you very guided as to what is your North Star. Why are you putting up with whatever you're putting up with? Why are you working hard to overcome, whatever you're overcoming? It's because you have a mission and a purpose that's greater than you as an individual or the team. So
I love that. That is really, really powerful. Final question for you, Adrian. What's the best piece of advice you'd like to give the audience or your 30-year-old self?
Well, the advice, maybe those are slightly two different things, but related. I think if I was relating to my 30-year-old self, I take my work really, really seriously. I often don't take myself seriously, but I take the responsibilities of my role and what we do at Foghorn exceptionally seriously. And I think I would tell my 30-year-old self maybe to relax a little bit more, take time to celebrate the successes, I tend to be someone like, we achieve something, I'm like, all right, next goal, let's take the next hill, let's keep pushing forward. And maybe the best advice I would give to people, specifically being in the space of cancer drug discovery and development, is life is short. And I think, we should all be ensuring that we're spending time with the people we love and the people who are close to us, because you just don't know. I think what's going to be around the corner. So that doesn't mean don't work hard. Of course, you should, be doing things that are impactful with your life, but definitely focus on taking the time to be with the people that you care about. So hopefully that's a balance to the business and the personal, and hopefully that's helpful advice to people out there.
No, it's very helpful. Well, Adrian, thank you so much. Everybody, this is Foghorn Therapeutics, ticker symbols FHTX. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon. This was really, really fantastic.
Absolutely, Adam. Thanks for having me. Delighted to hopefully share some helpful information.
Thank you.